Okay, so I have now decided that I want to get this type to fit across two columns. I'm not going to marry myself to the very quarter-inch mark here, but I am going to measure the distance between the edge of the page and the beginning of the B, and I'm going to do that again with a rectangle. And I'm going to make a box here. And if I want to know the size that I just created that box at, I press the Option key with the box tool still selected, rectangle tool, and click, it will show me it's the width is 0.6389. So why is that important? Well, it could be important if I needed to make sure there was a specific printing tolerance, that a printer said you can't go any wider than or any narrower than. And I want to also make sure that I just don't think mentally that it looks too big. I think it is. I think it should probably be 0.5. So I'm going to change this width to 0.5 right here, and it'll resize the next box to 1/2 inch wide. And I'm going to substitute that box for this box. And move this over. And then on this other side, if I have any elements that are large elements, I don't want them to go any further over than this mark here. But I do want to size this text so it comes up to the edge of the second column. As far as designing for covers and one-offs is when you don't have to keep repeating the same design over and over again, as is a poster. You are creating certain rules, and then you are creating another set of rules that you'll allow to be broken and how. So what I do want is this text to stay in this corner, but to come up to the edge where this margin begins. So to do that in Illustrator, I'm going to use this tool. This is the scale tool right here. And I'm going to click a single click up in this corner, one click. And that actually locks this corner down on that line temporarily. So that when I click and drag and hold the Shift key down, it's sizing from that corner. So it's staying lined up in that corner. So that when I come out to and hit this mark, I know it's lined up. And then for these two panels of text here, I want them on the page, but I want them to use the grid, which clearly they are not. So once again, I'm going to select the type. First, I think I'll scale the box to fit properly across here. Okay. And now I'm going to show you a very funky little trick here. I should be able to, once again, go to Window, Type, Tabs. You notice how the Tabs panel sticks itself right on top of the selected box? It knows that box is selected and it puts itself there. If that ever, like for some reason you're like sneeze and you flail and you're like, oh, I moved it, what? You can click on this little magnet and it should stick back on there. All right, so now I want to have happen is I want to make sure that this tabs over onto the edge of my column. It's not moving, and this goes away. Okay, so there, that looks better, right? So that's lined up there and there. And now what's going to happen if I resize the text? So I'm going to select all the text and come up to the size field and use the up arrow, and it should stay inside the blocks. And that'll do it. That looks much better. Okay, I'm going to click away. I'm going to hide the tab panel. I'm going to go to View, and this is a key command that I would suggest you learn. It's the Hide Guides key command. It's Command semicolon. So Command semicolon, Command semicolon. And it's already starting to have like a kind of a modern feel to it, just because of the juxtaposition of the size of type and a lot of negative space. I'm kind of concerned about this number 1 down here. It looks kind of strange, like it's maybe got a space in front of it. So you see it now? That 1 is bothering me. Does that have a space in front of it? It doesn't appear to. So could I fix that? Well, yeah, I probably could. I could probably kern it over using a negative vertical space. So where the heck is that All right, so I'm going to go to Window, Comparing, Contrasting Illustrator and InDesign, type character, and then here is kerning, and this is tracking. So I'm going to make it negative kern. Isn't moving. Cannot tell. Seems to not be moving at all. Nothing's happening. If I track it negative, will anything happen? No, not at all. If I select this character and I move it back, won't allow me to do it. Sad, sad state of affairs. Okay? So I'm kind of like deciding whether I, can move. Oh, it's moving. It's moving. It seems to be moving the space, though, in between those two letters, not really where I want it to move. So now it's at -4. So I'm going to have to either move that with an indent or a negative indent or an outdent or something to fix that, or I'm going to have to let it go and try to sleep anyway. Because that's a little bit of space. They'll probably never notice it, but you might be concerned about it in another document. If you really needed to, you could set an outdent in the style, but I'm just going to leave it alone. All right, so here I'm going to put capitals on these because I think it'll look better, and I'm good with that. So I'm going to zoom out, Command minus, and again, Command semicolon, and click away so there's nothing selected. And now I'm going to talk about importing art. Okay, so I might have already broken my rule here. I didn't want to go any further than that line. No, I'm okay. All right, so now I'm going to go over to my search window where I was earlier searching for things that I wanted to keep and look at. Apparently I closed the browser window, so I'm going to go back over to a different browser window and I'm going to get some artwork. Now I know there's going to be cases where you have to get some artwork that is not artwork that you made. So this next topic is copyright free or safe artwork. There is the organization called the Creative Commons. And Creative Commons are limited licenses and free artwork that you can use in your projects without infringing on a copyright. So I'm typing Creative Commons images and hitting return. CC search, Creative Commons search, Flickr Creative Commons section, many places to look. Okay, all kinds of Creative Commons images. And I'm going to go here to CC search at Creative Commons, and I'm going to look up a Virgo emblem, sign, Virgo logo. Let's see what that brings up. Could be frightening. Okay, nothing that I can recognize so far. Okay, so I'm going to do Virgo symbol. Better, okay? So now I have the Virgo symbols that I need. I could make one pretty easily, but I wanted to show you how to do this. So I'm going to go with this one here, this emoji style one. And I am here to share this, remix. These are the permissions that I can have. I can basically go for it. So I'm going to click on it, and it's really small, so it's probably not going to look that good, but that's okay. Go back here. It looks bigger there. I'm going to control click on that and do copy image. I've now copied it. I'm going to tab back over to Illustrator and paste it, edit, paste. It's not that small, okay? And I have no idea what's going on now because I can't see my grid. So Command semicolon, and I think I'll put it actually here. Scale it, S for scale, click on the corner, click, hold the shift key and drag, and it should scale decent. And then I think what I'll do is I will just slide this text box down a little. This is really not an element, so I should probably delete it now. And Command semicolon. So I'm starting to get some good, nice negative spacing just by using that grid and just by using simple hierarchy of type. So let's say I wanted to push this design a little bit further, which I do. So I'm going to turn the grid back on, and I'm going to select this shape here, and I'm going to scale it so it comes across 2 columns. S for scale, click on the corner, click and hold the shift key down. That's going to scale it up to this edge. But now, of course, you can't read the text. Not so good. So I'm going to move it. I'm going to send it behind in the stack. I'm going to go Object, Arrange, and Send to Back. Still can't read the text. And then I'm going to dim this object. I'm going to take the object and essentially I'm going to make it be less dark. To do that, I'm going to need a thing called the Layers panel. Under Window, here it is. It's the Layers panel, and it contains all of the elements that I've put into this document so far. And it's all actually a lot of guides and only a few actual design elements. The symbol, the headline text, and the body text, and all the rest of these are the guides. You can see as I turn them off, they hide themselves. So I want to move this green symbol to its own layer. And it's all in one layer right now. And I could do more separating out to keep things organized. Both InDesign and Illustrator have layers, but in Illustrator it becomes really important when you're designing something to have multiple layers. So I'm going to create a new layer. Here it is. This is the new layer button. And I'm going to make sure that my new layer is underneath my other layers. And then I'm going to click on the green symbol and I'm going to move it down into layer 2. And the main reason I'm doing that is so that I can then double click on layer 2, open it up, and you can see here dim images, and I'll dim this image down to 50% and look at it. That looks better. I'll dim it a little bit more. I'll bring it down to 30%. I still feel like the text is interfering too much with the logo. So I'm just going to move it down just so it's out of reach of the logo, and then Command semicolon. I like it. It feels balanced. I need one more line here saying some information regarding this, a little more information regarding this chart. This is as simple as I can do this. So again, I'll turn my guides back on, Command semicolon. And I'm going to create a baseline with a guide at the bottom of my document. Drop this down right there. And zoom tool and clicking on this corner. Spacebar gives me the hand tool and text box. And I'm going to create a small text box that runs across the page. I'm guessing that's close to being across the page with the bottom of the text box hitting the guideline. And I'll just type prepared by Jane Doe, February 18th, 2016. Okay. Now the text box was at the bottom, but the type is not at the bottom. The baseline of the type would be the bottom of an descender, such as the P, and I'm making sure that that P hits the bottom. And then again, Command semicolon, Command minus a few times, Tab key to hide the panels, Command 0 to fit in window. Okay, so my preparer type is a little large and kind of bulky, and it doesn't really look like it's really in the document. It looks like it's an afterthought. So I'll turn my guides back on. I'll turn my grid back on, not my guides, and I'll put this in a more appropriate place. So it probably needs to be smaller so that it fits inside these 2 columns, right, to look balanced. So I'm selecting it and using the down arrow key. Now that's too small, or maybe not, right? So I'll click away. It doesn't have to fill both columns, but it shouldn't exceed and go into the other one. That'll make it look odd. And so now it looks more balanced and probably wants to come up a little. And that I'm just gonna just do my eye. I'm gonna slide this up. Do I like it there, or do I want it here? Okay, and then selecting and moving things straight down, holding the Shift key. All right, so I hope this starts to give you an understanding of some technique of using the two of these programs. Okay, so there's my handsome cover. I think that will be fine. And I'll save it. Now it's saved, and it's saved as Chart Cover AI. If I want it in my InDesign document so I can print out the whole thing as one piece, I'll go back to InDesign, and let's get in the right file. This is the file I wanted it in, and I want it to be its own first page. So now I have a lot of stuff going on here that is going to have to get moved around. So here is some interesting stuff to notice that I didn't point out before. First of all, there's numbers starting on the first page, but there's a 1 on this page, and there's also a 1 on this page. What's going on there? And this one is 2. Well, that's because I told page 2 to act as page 1, but I forgot to tell page 1 to stop acting as page 1. Here's what I mean. I'm going to go over to the Pages panel, and I'm going to click on page 2, which has the chart on it. Flyout menu. Allow document pages to shuffle. Allow selected page to shuffle, and numbering and section options. And here it says start numbering at 1. It says start numbering at 1 when page 2 is selected. That's why it has a 1 on it. Okay? So I'm going to take that away. Putting automatic page numbering back. Now it's set to the default. And now if I just let it do whatever it wants, I'll just do that. And now it actually decided to make them a double page spread. That's a whole other thing I have to move around. But what I want you to see is that I'm going to select the first page that I know if I double click on it, it's really putting me on the first page. And I want to add a page before this page. To add a page before this page, I can't just click on add page here because that'll add it after it. It won't add it before it. Okay, so I'm going to undo that. I'm going to click here. And then I'm going to go to the Pages panel again from this flyout, and I'm going to choose Insert Page, and I have to tell it to be before the page. If I want it to have no numbering on it, okay, I'm going to tell it not to use a master, basically no master or blank. And now, even though it says 1 here, there's no 1 on the page. Before you came, I actually set up the master page numbers on the A master. If I double click A master, there it is. There's the A. That's what makes it be a page number. And I'll talk about the specifics of that next time. But if I go to page that I want to be 2 now, and I'm going to double click on it, it says 2. And I'm going to go to the flyout menu here for my Pages panel. And again, I'm going to change that setting to numbering and section options and have page 2, which is the page I'm on, start at 1. And then it's going to complain. And then when I click again, it says 1 here. There's no 1 on this page because there's no master on that page with actually the object that produces the number, and then 2 is 1. Okay? All right, so I'm going to go back to 1, and on page 1 I'm going to go File, Place. And what I'm selecting is Chart Cover. Double click it, And if I just click in the corner, it should just put it on there. Yeehaw. And then I can center it. Now, if I do this again, File, Place, I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to select it. I'm going to click Open, and I'm not going to double click. This time I'm going to come to the corner, and I'm going to drag to the edge. And it's only putting on there the text that it had to put. It made it look short because there's nothing on the bottom. It's not really cut off, okay? And then it's questionable whether I really put this in the right spot because I don't have my ½ inch margin on there, okay? So these are all things you're like thinking about all the time. So I'm going to try this idea again with a rectangle here. I'm going to Option click, and I'm going to make this a ½ inch, 0.5, tab, 0.5, okay? And I'll make this square that I just created have a fill of some color. Doesn't really matter what color. And now this will give me the spot from which I can then drag. I'm going to press the Option key to make a copy of it because I need one on each side. And now I'm going to place, again, nothing is selected, File, and I'm going to place my artwork. And here it is, chart cover. Do it. And I'm going to go from this corner to when it hits that side, and that should be about right. And now I'll get rid of these. You're like, no, keep those. Okay, here, I'll put one down here. I heard you. Okay, but I don't think we should keep a magenta. So I want to have a custom color in this document. I already made colors in here earlier, or talked about them anyway, right? I believe I made a blue at some point, or maybe that was in the other document. If I want this green to be in this palette, I'm going to select it by clicking on it. That is really not quite what I wanted to have happen, but because this green is here, I can drag it down into this palette. There's that green. And now I'll set this background back to no color again, and no color, no outline up here. There. All right. And I'll make these little squares be that green. Holding the Option key to make a copy. Okay, so I have the main elements of my poster. There's maybe it's a little bit left heavy. What happens if I do this? So in InDesign, oh, wrong item. Oh, now I can't get it because this is in front of that. This was placed after this was created, so it's on top. So I can't get at it unless I go Object and send it to the back. Arrange, send to back. Click away, and now I can click this. In InDesign and in Illustrator, you'll see these green lines. Those are smart guides, and I can only line up to something that is actually a vector-based object in InDesign here, and I could also line up to this edge here. So I can take it up this line. And then I want the one that goes across, and now it's juxtaposed in between those. All right, so any questions? Let's stop this movie.